Warm greetings. Welcome to Grammar of a Lake, a podcast with a goal to understand urban lakes of India. I'm Akash, a curious youth who has often wondered about the life of lakes around us. In this series, I'll be talking with Dr. Mansee Bal Bhargava, who has spent over 3 decades learning, loving, and living the urban lakes. In the conversation, we shall explore and experience our understanding about lakes, since they are very much part of our everyday life, whether we realize it or not. Together, we shall co learn and co create how we may acknowledge, appreciate, and celebrate these lakes that quietly shape our cities and our communities. Without further ado, let's begin the conversation on birth and death of a lake. Dr. Mansi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Akash. One of the closest topic to my heart to be on how a lake is born or how it dies. Please go ahead.
All right, this will be an interesting talk. All right, so let me start with my first question itself. How do you see birth and death of a lake?
Yes. First of all, to go into the birth, we need to understand the classification how we put urban lakes into the country. See, a dam is also called a lake. A wetland is also called a lake. A pond is also called a lake. So the nomenclature itself makes it very interesting to understand. So the moment you make a dam and you call it as Hirakund Lake, it's a lake born, right? Just giving one example. The moment you dug, uh, you have dug something to make a small pit or a pool, and then you give it a name casually as a lake, it is also born. Just giving again another example. So we need to understand that there are two things happening simultaneously. Water bodies, which are humanly constructed, like canals, streams, rivers, they are dammed, and then they, for certain extent, you may call, they may have different names, but then if they have certain kind of shape, they get categorized into lakes. Then there are natural systems also, wetlands, lakes themselves, ponds. Most of the Ramsar lakes are natural wetlands, but some of them are called wetlands, some of them are called lakes. Chilika Lake, it's a wetland. The Porbil Lake, it is a wetland. Loktak Lake, it is a wetland. These are all natural systems. Then there are ponds also. So most of the water bodies and ponds are humanly constructed. Tanks are humanly constructed. So when we construct anything, we give it a form, a shape, an identity, a function that we aspire because we have constructed it. Of course, it is born there. It's like a human aspiration or construction. So there is no, I will say, confusion in that part. Confusion starts with that every water body is casually either called wetland, lake, or ponds, but there are natural systems which are also born. And the birth of a lake may be dependent on many aspects, and that is where the next part of the birth of water bodies come into picture, is how do you look at lakes? Because if you don't know the birth, it is just like human beings. If I am born with xyz DNA, I have certain kind of shape, form, certain kinds of genetic memory I carry, and certain kinds of chronic diseases I carry from my previous predecessors or previous generations. Likewise, the lake also has a very important, origin to be understood before we do anything to the lake. So the origin may be tectonic, and I'm talking in terms of now natural lakes, because human constructed lakes can be reservoirs, ponds, canals, tanks. Natural, when the reason may be tectonic, volcanic, maybe glacial, maybe basalt rock dissolution, maybe fluvial, maybe just a depression pond, which is then further constructed by human into proper pond and lake. So the way it gets a form, and with monsoon, when it is filled with water, and then administrative layer of classification, the nature of the lake will depend on how it is born. importantly because the soil type, the vegetation type, the depth, the rocks, the minerals, the kind of elevation or altitude it is located. So considering all lakes as same and using a panacea or same kind of treatment to either develop the lake or restore the lake is something which we completely misjudge about its origin. It's just like, like we are also doing in medicine practice, that we try a lot with other animals, all our medicines for that matter, before we try on human beings. Uh, and I personally see a flaw in that, because of course you cannot test on human beings uh, in medical practice, but then it is also something ethically wrong, I feel, in medical practice, that you try because the other animals don't say anything. But coming back to the lakes, because we do not consider these differences, we treat them equally. Some lakes are in mountain regions, some are in coastal regions, some are in peninsular region, and they are having completely different nature in their ecosystem. Limnologically, also, you can look at lakes in that form. Some are inland freshwater lakes, some are inland brackish water lake, some are pure brackish water lake, some are salt water lake. And we have all these types of lakes in the country, by the way. So it's then having one size fits all, there is a problem, because then we fail the understanding of it. And then when you are going for an intervention into a lake, you also have to look at its trophic state. So even the birth of a lake can also decide its trophic state, because if you are doing something at a trophic state where it is already oligotropic, very nice, for example, in a pristine landscape, we have many oligotropic lakes also in northeast, in Meghalaya and other places. You have eutrophic lakes, which are very polluted, mesotropic, severe polluted, and dystrophic, which is almost like the dead lake. Nothing can be done. It's completely filled up and garbage. So unless and until we understand how it took shape in terms of its birth or in terms of its construction, what is its state in terms of its health, where is it located, what are the limnological characteristics, then and then only you can. It's like a diagnosis any medical practitioner does on a patient. Then and then only it should be decided what needs to be done on this lake, instead of just doing lakefront development left, right, and center. And that's why I thought it is very important to talk about that every lake is unique, just the same way every human being has a unique DNA. So you need to actually talk about combinations of its origin, of its limnological characteristics, of its tropical characteristics, of its geographical characteristics, and on top of it, whether it was natural, it has naturally evolved, or whether it was a one-time act by as a human construction. So I will stop here actually.
Well, that was very interesting. Like humans, even lakes have their
And we
own
have to give,
characteristics.
we have to compare it with humans, then it makes sense to understand. I have still not touched the death aspect, because birth aspect itself needs little bit of enlightenment. But let's see,
Right.
we go further then.
All right. Uh, Coming to my next question, how is birth and death of a lake misunderstood?
Yeah, I mean, I already started talking about it earlier itself. The misunderstanding is that we consider lake as a very simple system, that a piece of land filled with water. I mean, I will repeat this line again and again, because unfortunately, even our policy document defines a lake like that. And I think it is too generalized, and the misunderstanding starts from its generalization that every lake is same or similar in this country. No, it's not like that. And I think that needs to be changed. So before any lake project takes place, a serious inventory needs to go through, which is not happening at this moment. The inventory is really bare minimum in terms of its area, in terms of its quantity of water, in terms of its quality of water, in terms of its depth of water. And I think that is injustice to understand that water body. It's just like you go for your treatment of, let's say, dengue or dengue, and you get treated for malaria. They look similar, but they are not same, you know. So I think the misunderstanding is also because we don't because we are acting today and we think that they are existing here. We don't take its years of existence also, whether this lake is 100 years old or it has been there since ever. We miss a very nuanced feature of the water body. And that is where I have concern. Because the moment you act on it and do something on it, it behaves in a very different way than you would actually had imagined.
Right.
So I want to give a definition of what Ministry of Water Resources or Jal Shakti now actually gives a lake as, and I quote from their definition: a standing water body with a minimum water depth of 3 meters and generally cover a water spread of more than 10 hectare or have no or very little aquatic vegetation. This is from our policy document. Now, this was a definition of a lake. Now, definition of a wetland also needs to be relooked, and it's just like the way we are, homogenizing the very identity of these water bodies. So, Ministry of Environment and Forest, and now climate change added into it, of the government of India defines wetland as a shallow lake that. So, look at it, as shallow lakes, they are generally less than 3 meters deep in their water spread area and are usually rich in nutrients that are derived from surroundings and their sediments. Wetlands have abundant growth of aquatic macrophytes and they support high density and diversity of flora, fauna, particularly birds, fish, and macroorganisms, and so on and so forth. And therefore, wetlands are generally considered of high value of diversity of conservation. Now, when we define wetland, we need to use the word lake, and when we define lake, we need to use the word wetland. That is also very interesting for me to observe. But I can understand that for designation of the lake, we need certain kind of definition. But beyond designation, description of the lake also has to be part of policy document. When is this lake born? What are the characteristics? Why this lake is facing this kind of problem, or why this lake is flourishing with this kind of ecosystem? That can be only understood when we understand the birth of a place of a lake. Sorry, it's just like our birth, nothing different. Where, with which parents we are born, which region we are born, what kind of genetic combination we bring forth as a human, how are we groomed? That is the state, or the health, that will depend. So sticking to birth, I think DNA is a very classic example to give in comparison as an analogy. I will stop
Right.
here.
So the perspective, the human perspective, or a single lifetime perspective of a lake also creates this misunderstanding. As in,
Hmm.
I will live for 80 years, so in front of me the lake lives for 80 years only. Maybe it
Hmm.
survived thousands of years, but I do not acknowledge or I do not know actually. So
Yeah, but it is
probably
possible to know, by the way, the life of the water body. It is possible.
okay, it is
So we have scientific ways to find out.
okay.
But the thing is, we
And
are not investing time and energy into finding it out because we are so much busy in solving the problem that we have no time to understand the problem.
hmm, right,
Do you understand that there is a problem here? And philosophically, I love to talk through philosophy. Philosophically, theoretically, as academicians or researchers, we always believe understanding the problem is half more than half the problem solved. And now here we don't have time to understand the problem, understand the ecosystem itself, forget about the problem. Why is it even flourishing? That also we are, because when it is flourishing we have no interest or no time to even study the system.
Hmm. Right.
We are only
S-
addressing the system when the system is in crisis.
Correct. Right.
It's just like
Also,
you go to hospital
understand.
only when you are unwell and not doing your regular checkups to keep yourself well. You know?
Correct. Right. Also, when we do not understand the birth, we won't even know when the lake dies. Is it? Do you feel?
Absolutely. I mean, I really wish to talk about death at length because then the discussion on sustainability, resilience, adaptability, all these three concepts will come very close to discussing death, you know. But we have to take these topics to both of the topics together because the very aspect of prolonging the death is where lake development and lake restoration and all these lakefront development projects are all about prolonging the death of the lake, you know.
Oh, so you're saying they're prolonging the death of a lake.
Yes, so that is where we have to really nail the coffin to understand how we misunderstand birth, and that leads to also misinterpreting and misunderstanding the death of the lake.
Right.
Oh, this is really very close to my heart topic, to be honest.
Yes, it's quite interesting. Um, all right, let me move to my third question.
Hmm.
What challenges come in the way of acknowledging birth and death of a lake?
And because I'm just focusing right now on birth, it needs more discussion on death. I think the challenge again goes back to education in this sense, because see, medical science has advanced so much in knowledge. I love to always give a comparison with medical science because there's a very interesting word called diagnosis in medical science. You know, I think we are missing diagnosis of water bodies, missing the diagnosis of that lakes, which we want to do something about. Even if it is in good shape, I will prefer to have a diagnosis of it, why it is in good shape, and then develop a database for it for regular monitoring and interventions. I think that is not happening. And of course, because we are not educated to do that, we are not doing it. That does not mean that we do not have now systems in place. We do have systems in place to really take care of it. It's just that we need our willingness to set up a kind of a database system which can be filled in by people. And now we are living in a time of coding, AI, and everything. I don't think it should be possible, impossible to not be able to do it once we set up a database system, how to fill it. So, diagnosis of a lake is basic, I feel. And it is a challenge because who is going to bell the cat, as in who is going to set up the database system? We have more data crisis than lake crisis, to be honest.
Hmm.
I mean, I recall my time from my PhD when I was doing field work. I used to go to different offices because it was on governance, and I will ask on governance data, you know. So they will have some pollution data. Local authorities will give me some pollution data of year wise, some land revenue data. But then how these data will come together? Some will also give me some GIS data. But how is that organization which is taking care of the lake is utilizing that data, is bringing or converging that data to make a sense of what to do? They do not have that kind of system. We do not have that kind of system in place. And I'm saying that it is possible to do that, well, make that kind of system. If every local authority wants to really take care of the lake, they have to first establish the database or data center for the lake, where the diagnosis can happen over time. Like pollution control board is taking care of pollution. Likewise, other limnological characteristics, likewise aquatic characteristics. But then there are also archaeologists who can also tell us the birth and other features of the lake. Even if it is humanly constructed, my argument will be that we should put them on record. Like when I studied Thalkej Lake for my master's, I was told through oral history, like from the local people, great grandparents, that this in that time, 2000, 1997, 98, my God, I forgot.
Oh,
So almost 30 years ago, I was told by the grandparents and ammas in the village that the lakes which I was studying was 130 years old. Now that is a sketchy figure, right? So because it was a humanly constructed set of lakes, we still don't have that in record in the local authority. My point is just have it in record because that helps in evaluating it over time, monitoring it over time. How? Because if we set up a database and we start monitoring, we can understand lake better, and we can also do a lot of predictive analysis. Where is it going? How far can you prolong the death? See, you can prolong the death in a fraction of a day because you fill the garbage, it gets filled, and the lake is dead. Because please understand, the death of a lake is the birth of a land. That is also something important to be understood. I love the line which I always use in my motivational talks or expert talks on lakes. A lake lost is a land gained.
interesting.
So there has been a systematic murder, or I will say a process towards the death of the lake. When we have lost more than 50% of the lakes in this country, and the remaining 50% are lost by size. So we are actually left with quarter of the lakes in last 100 years.
Hmm. Okay.
And if we had it on record, we can actually understand the chronology of the death or of the development, and then it will help us to save the remaining 25% of the lakes, you know
Hmm.
because we cannot come out with an idea what to do or what not to do. Now there are rampant lake birth also through the Manrega scheme. For example, a lot of ponds are dug all over the country. We need, then who is going to, now there is no database for that also. Now these are newly built or born lakes or water bodies or ponds, whatever you may call. Some are called lakes, some are called, to the extent that one lake enthusiast I know in the country who even made a lake, and I think it is in Uttar Pradesh, of India shape. How and why is it required? So that, anyway, I'm not talking about the shape of it, but then if you are giving birth to new set of lakes after losing 75% of them by area, then we had all the choice in last 20, 30 years to have a record of them. We still don't have. We have census of lakes now, and I think the census of lake can be further populated with more details. And we need to have differentiation, because census is a very good thing which has happened to the lakes. At least now we know which are the designated lakes. It's a different story that while doing the census of the lakes, we lost most of the lakes because it was dependent on local authorities to designate a particular lake as a lake. And conveniently, giving an example, during my master's thesis, 1997, Ahmedabad had 630 lakes, the greater Ahmedabad, the metropolitan region. The area increased, and after the designation and census of the lake, Ahmedabad has barely 122 lakes. So then we have to ask question that 520 lakes died. Where are they? Where did they go? I will call it death of the lake. If they are no more there as lake, they died. It's a simple way. Maybe it sounds philosophical, but it is a death of the lake. We also need to then have a diagnosis or investigation. How are the lakes dying? That was also part of my PhD thesis, by the way. Where did they go? Why did they die? You know?
Right. Right.
But we take the death part more in detail. What do we mean by death of the lake? I mean, I think that requires
Sure.
just in discussion.
Yes, I think we'll have a part B of this
Yes.
conversation also.
Yeah.
Right. Um, all right. So, coming to my last question,
Hmm.
how can we improve our understanding of birth and death of a lake? I understand that we'll cover later on. And
Yes.
what would be your solution to course correct?
Yes, I think the first good thing which has happened right now is that we have now a basic census of the lakes. We must start from it as a reference point. And every local authority which has kind of a responsibility to take care of the lake must set up its data center, uh, database. Every local authority is obliged to have a lake management cell, which is often like a ghost cell. Must establish that as a database and monitoring center, and start with census as a reference point. Engage more hydrologists, limnologists to give us more details. So it's okay to have a standard kind of a framework for every lake in the country. But then, because we are talking about the birth of the lake, then at that every lake it behaves differently. I think within that standard framework, then if we can set up a data, just like we are doing Aadhaar for us, I mean, we have failed in Aadhaar, that's a different story. But take lake A, B, C, X, Y, Z. With A, you have this certain census-based data, and then add to it additional data. Engage youth into doing that. Give them different attributes. Engage hydrologist, limnologist, algologist, archaeologist importantly, and get the basic data for each lake. And it is just a matter of filling it one time in the database. I will say every local authority should have a database of them. Every lake should have a good database, and census is a good start. That is my point. So we have already done the homework. The foundation work is done, but it is just like, human census does not tell everything, because that is also insufficient to tell who am I. You need more details about it. So we are there. We should actually take it up. That's my point. I may be too obsessed with lakes. We have so many tasks to do in the country.
Well, that's a very interesting point. Having a census of, we had a census of lakes, but having more data sets aligned in every corner of the country so that we can populate that census with more information.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just coming back, because the thing is, census is for very general information. That I am Indian. My age is this. I was born this year, born to this parent. This is my economic status. I have this religion. So, and full stop. But there are many more things about. And I love to bring an analogy of human beings with lakes all the time, because this is one of the simplest way we can explain to people should be done to lakes, because they are living beings like us. That's the thing. That is the point. And that's where I would also like to later highlight, anything born is bound to die. And we need to understand death of the lake very well.
Right. All right, so that seems to be the end of my questions. To our viewers, we will have a part B on death of a lakes. We will have it next week. You may find Grammar for Lake session at our YouTube channel, V for Water, and on our website, www.w4w.in, along with many conversations dedicated to water. Since we believe water conversations are a way towards water conservation. Stay tuned. See you again on Saturday Sailing. Take care, and thank you for listening. Thank you, Mansee ma'am.
Thank you, Akash. You touched the very soft corner of my, lake understanding. We see each other soon. Bye bye. Take care.